Councilor Pereira.
Here. First item on the agenda is citizen input. Did we receive anything?
No, we did not.
Okay. Item number 2 on the agenda is the minutes of the October 8th, 2019 meeting.
Motion to adopt.
Is there a second on the motion to adopt?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we need a roll call.
Oh, yes, we need a roll call because of COVID.
Councilor Dion.
Yes.
Councilor Liberty LeBeau.
Yes.
Councilor Pereira.
Here. Yes. Okay. Item number 3 on the agenda is a resolution to discuss outdoor dining seating for restaurants. This resolution is for, whereas restaurants in Fall River have been requesting outside dining in front of their establishment from Memorial Day through Columbus Day to provide increased services and add to the activity and ambiance of their establishment since 2014. And whereas in recent months, the COVID-19 pandemic has adversely impacted the ability of many local restaurants to maintain cash flow and remain a viable business in our city. And whereas the governor has established an order to allow for outside dining seating at the start of phase 2 of the Massachusetts reopening effort, whereas allowing outside dining and seating would greatly assist the Fall River restaurants to remain in business, be it resolved that the City Council Committee on Economic Development and Tourism convene with Director of Code Enforcement, Director of Traffic, City Planner, representative from the Police Department, representative from the Police Commission, a representative from the Licensing Board and Corporation Council to discuss and assist in immediate development of policies and guidelines that outside seating and service be allowed at these establishments immediately, provided the configuration of the seating does not prohibit public access in front of the establishment that the business is allowed to immediately utilize half of the sidewalk or other designated areas, and be it resolved that once protocols are developed, that a proposed ordinance will be submitted to the Committee on Ordinances and Legislation. So I think the first order of business would be to go around the room and introduce ourselves to the individuals that are here. So, Mr. Hathaway, if you want to start.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Glenn Hathaway. I'm Inspector of Buildings for the City of Fall River.
Jeff? You want to introduce yourself, Jeff? Jeff, do you want to introduce yourself?
Is it Jim?
Muted? Mr. Kenny?
Yes, good morning. Good morning, everybody. This is Bill Kenny in the City Planning Department, and Kerry Ayash from Licensing is here with me as well.
Okay.
Laura Ferraro with Traffic and Parking for the City of Fall River.
Alan?
Alan Rumsey, Corporation Counsel.
Brian?
Detective Brian Canero for Police, Licensing and Ordinance.
Thank you. And on the line, we have Dan Robelot, I believe, is online.
Good morning,
Yeah.
Dan Robelot, Fall River Disability Commission member.
And Dennis Pacelli.
Dennis Pacelli, Fall River Commission on Disability.
Okay, the last one is Jeff. I'm not sure if Jeff is.
Sorry, I didn't realize you were talking to me. My name is Jim.
Jim, that's why you didn't know. I was calling you Jeff.
So my name is Jim McKegg. I work for the state. I'm with Mass Development in a program called the Transformative Development Initiative. I've met several of you so far on the line, and it's good to be introduced to all of you. So we are working with a number of community partners, and in Fall River, our concentration is around the South Main area, but we're working with businesses in neighboring areas as well.
Thank you. I think first, if we would discuss, and Mr. Hathaway, I think would be the best, and Kerry Ayash, to tell us what the rules and regulations are regarding the governor's opening. If you want to run down that, Mr. Hathaway.
So most of the regulations that I've been involved with thus far entail businesses that have private property or parking lots, nothing in a public way so far. That's why we're here to resolve the public way issues, which is where Detective Brian Cadero, Laura, and all them come in to play in the public ways. There are several restaurants on private property in parking lots that have asked to take parking spaces in front of their establishments. I have created a building permit that outlines what they need to do in order to get permission to take parking areas. One is fill out the building permit. They need to surround the area in concrete blocks, which is outlined in the building permit, to protect the pedestrians sitting at tables. That also requires Brian Cadero from the police department to participate along with me. In some cases, the fire department has attended inspections with me on some of these to make sure that they have the proper fire protection out there, such as just a sprinkler, fire extinguisher. For the most part, all the ones that's done right now, and I'm going to say a half a dozen of them, are in compliance. They are waiting for approval from the licensing board in order to extend their liquor license and serve liquor in these extended areas.
Thank you. Pam, I believe Councilor Liberty had a question.
Glenn, is that building permit going to be expedited?
It is, yes.
It is.
Yes, and they are issued a certificate of inspection upon the completion of that permit. I'm trying to do them within 1 to 2 days and get it back out. If we can't get the permit out to them, meaning the CI, I'm giving them a verbal to open. That's what we did last week, based on the fact that last Monday night, I think it was 4 o'clock, they were allowed to have outdoor seating. So if I didn't get and one of them was Pub 99. They had all the paperwork in the office. We didn't get it printed in time. I gave them a verbal based on talking with fire department, police department, and Kerry.
So you're just speaking about seating that's in a public way, in a parking lot or in a public way, correct?
Could you say that again, Pam, please?
We're just speaking about, that's just for seating that's going to be in a public way, in a parking lot or where there's traffic, correct?
Well, yes, that's all we're discussing today. A lot of people in the past have wanted to go out on the sidewalks in front of their businesses.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, the city doesn't have very wide sidewalks to allow the people that are not so fortunate and they're in a wheelchair to pass through. So my suggestion to the city council was to allow these people to take parking places in front of their establishments and keep the sidewalks open. So pedestrians can still go by. The seating will be in a parking area outlined if they choose to do so with concrete barriers that's got to be approved by the various departments. But to keep the sidewalks open so as to not to interfere with any pedestrians, whether they're walking or in a wheelchair.
So for instance, if there was a restaurant on South Main Street, TA,
Yep.
you're saying they could put tables in the parking spaces on South Main and leave the sidewalk open?
That's what I'm proposing
Okay.
if the city council decides to do such a thing.
Okay. And Council Pereira, I just have a question. The purpose of your resolution is to expedite outdoor seating for food and alcohol due to COVID, correct?
Correct. And it's further resolved that we do something so that we can do this every year from October, from Memorial Day to Columbus Day. So it's twofold.
Okay. So I had looked into what they've done in Swansea, Seekonk, and New Bedford, and they all have an expedited permitting process. And per the governor's orders, I know our licensing board is meeting on Wednesday. The ABC is what would normally make the process a lot longer, as long as assuming that we can agree to where they would put their seating outside. They have all of these cities and towns have all agreed that either the mayor or the chair of the licensing board is allowed to approve these licenses and then just send a copy of everything to the ABC, so we don't have to wait for licensing board meetings. I know they're meeting on Wednesday. Do they plan to do that? I've not seen their agenda.
I think maybe Miss Ash would be able to speak to that.
Yes.
What- Yes.
You guys-
what-
Okay, let's get a little closer. Yes, what we're requesting from everybody, besides what the building department is asking for, is a sketch of the proposed new area where they're planning to put the tables.
Yep.
And where their current licensed building is, so we know the proximity. Their hours of operation in which they're looking to keep alcohol outside. And just a brief letter stating that they're requesting that. That's what we have on the agenda. We're not requiring them to come to the meeting to eliminate extra people being around as well.
So who, do they have to wait? I know you have a meeting on Wednesday, but if somebody applies after Wednesday, do they have to wait to the next licensing board meeting? Because
I don't know. I mean, that's up to the board. Maybe they'll decide that at the meeting. I don't know how they're gonna go about that.
So the governor's letter allows the licensing board to either say that their chair and the mayor can approve, not have to wait for the meeting, or just the mayor can approve without having to wait for the next meeting. I know I spoke to the administration this morning. They had interns call to all the restaurants in the city to see if there was anybody looking for outdoor seating or an expedited license. And they believe everybody is already on the agenda for Wednesday, but if someone was to come on Thursday or Friday with an application and decide they want to do this, I don't want them to have to wait until the next licensing board meeting. So I would hope that the licensing board at their meeting on Wednesday would make a motion to allow either the mayor and the chair to approve without waiting.
I would agree. I will put that on the agenda for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Liberty,
Yes.
would you like this committee to send a letter to the licensing board
Yes,
encouraging that it would be the mayor and the chairman of the licensing board?
yes, so we don't have to wait for the next meeting.
Okay, can I have a motion to send a letter?
Motion to send a letter.
Second.
Could we have a roll call? Could we have a roll call on that?
Yep. On a motion to send a letter to the licensing board, Councilor Dion,
Yes.
Councilor La Liberty LeBeau,
Yes.
Councilor Pereira.
Yes.
Linda?
Do you yield?
No, so then I have another question. I know they also have a process where they're doing it a little bit different depending on which city or town it is. But there's an expedited application for outdoor dining that needs approval from different departments in the city or town: police, fire, zoning, planning, board of health. Do we have anything like that put into effect yet?
To that, I would go to Mr. Kenny.
Where'd you get that?
Mr.
Yeah,
Kenny?
Again, Counselor, call your attention to a really applicable form I think that New Bedford's using. They've got a
Yes.
temporary outdoor cafe permit application.
Yeah, they have a great application online.
Yeah, sort of thing that Councilor La Liberty LeBeau is referring to, at the bottom of which, there you can see it, I guess. The checkoffs for all the relevant departments: inspectional, licensing, planning, DPI, health, police, fire, and health. So that exists. It's a good model. We could use this. We could put it together pretty quickly, and the licensing board could implement it.
Okay, and can we get both of those online?
Yeah, they're online at the City of New Bedford website. If,
Right, but Right, I have the
We
city of
put
New
'em
Bedford.
online.
Can we get it online for Fall River?
I
Sure,
don't
we
see why
can.
not, yeah.
I don't see a problem with
Yeah.
that.
That's up to IT,
Right,
but
right.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
that would be up to the IT department
Okay,
to help us out on that, you know.
okay. Could you request that as soon as you have it completed?
Would you like planning and licensing to work together to come up with a form? And
That would be,
consultation with the inspector as well?
yes, please.
Yeah, we can do that, and then we could go to IT and ask them to post it.
Okay, can you give me a time frame?
At your pleasure.
So today?
Yesterday.
Tomorrow? Yeah,
Hey, what are you talking about?
today, by noon.
We'll work on it this afternoon.
Okay, and I know that they also, whether they've advertised it or not, whether it's internally or externally, they've put, different cities and towns have put between a 24 to a 48-hour turnaround time on those applications. I'd like to see that as well.
Well,
As long as they are in compliance with the necessary, that need to be checked off, I'm sure it could happen.
I just don't want anybody having to, for Swansea, for example, they have a town administrator that's helping them, get all the approvals from the different departments, and that's their priority. I think they're doing the same thing in Seekonk. I'm not sure about New Bedford, but I know that they are all have a quick turnaround time on it for these restaurants.
I mean, in-house for the departments that are in the building, that's not a problem. I guess I don't know whether the applicant would be asked to do the legwork to get police and fire. They're not in the building.
Or is there someone that we could have as a point person? I know we don't have a city administrator right now, but is there someone we can have as a point person to help these restaurants with these applications if it's needed?
That would probably be me. That's what I do anyway, sure.
Okay, thank you.
I just think with the pandemic and people having to make appointments right now to go into City Hall, it would be difficult for that business owner to go around and gather all the signatures. So if Ms. Ayash is willing to be the point person for that, that would be helpful.
Yes.
Yeah, I already go outside and meet people when they need to speak with me as well. So this is probably no different.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you. I yield, Council Pereira.
Chairman?
Dion?
Yes, just for clarification, Mr. Hathaway, you had commented that this meeting was for the more to discuss people with sidewalks, etc. But it's my understanding that there are establishments that have already been approved for outside dining, and the only thing they're missing is the ability to serve alcohol outside at this point. Is that correct?
That is correct, because the ones that I have participated in, and I'm going to ask you to clarify, the commission here to clarify. So I have created a building permit for use of this on private property. Has nothing to do thus far with public ways. So public ways is a different application. As far as the building permit process that I've used and created for the private property, all these sign-offs that were required, we've been doing over the phone with Officer Cadero, Detective Cadero. Some of it's been done with Kerry. I've been notifying them all as these permits come in, and we've been doing the sign-offs. So as an example, Detective Cadero can vouch for this, that I call and I say, okay, 99 just, and he goes out and he inspects, he does his thing, and he'll call me back and say, I'm all set. So I initial the application in the location for the police department. I don't know if that's what the council wishes to do with the form that they're going to create. Because of COVID, it's difficult getting all these signatures and getting everybody in one place. So we've been doing it over the phone as I get them. The application that you're looking to create through Pam and the one for New Bedford is similar, I guess, but it'll be through the city clerk's office, I would assume. And Kerry Ayash is going to be responsible for making all the communication through that process. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, could I just clarify? I think that New Bedford model is a licensing board function. And by the way, just 2 points. It's the board would have to approve the form. I mean, we can prepare it for their Wednesday meeting. They can sign off on the form, and then it's going to be up to IT to cooperate to get this online. That's beyond the expertise and capabilities of the planning and licensing departments.
So if that were to be approved on Wednesday and you had the form available, people who have already been approved for the outdoor, for the capacity outdoors who are only waiting for the license could at that point get a copy of that, have it signed off on to expedite the situation?
I think we can have.
At that point, they've already been approved, so this will be for the next people who want to come aboard, I believe, unless you want all the previous people who have been approved that evening to fill one of these out as well, because at this point, I've gotten everything I need from the.
All right, I just wanted to distinguish. I wasn't sure which way this was going. So if that's the case, that's good, because I don't want to see these people lose another minute.
I understand that for sure.
If they're able to be on board. Because Council LeBeau also mentioned that the administration reached out to people to see if they wanted the outdoor dining. So some of them may not be approved even for outside dining, never mind the alcohol aspect. So they're a little, can they go to a meeting, ask for the alcohol license to be extended outside without being approved prior to that by the police department and Mr. Hathaway?
No, something has to be submitted to put on the agenda or just as we go forward, I think we've come to the conclusion that we want either the chair or the mayor to just say, as long as you give the proper paper, it will probably be this, but modified to say Fall River and get all of everything checked off, there won't be any need for that. So we're kind of in a holding pattern, but we're doing everything. I've been in communication with people nonstop over the phone. We're making it happen for them we're all kind of putting the pieces of this puzzle together as we go along.
Oh, I get it. This is like, talk about knee jerk and trying to hurry up. I get it. But yeah. I think that's why I just, it's not clear for us. It's a work in progress. So I'm just trying to, clarify it as much as possible for the people who are trying to get from point A to point B.
Sure, I understand. It's been same kind of situation with us. It's kind of been, here's bits and pieces of information. Now we have to work cohesively as a group to kind of all get the information on the same page and saying the same thing. That's what's been the most difficult, but we're doing fine. Also, they don't actually get a license once they've been approved. What we do is we just amend their current license that they have up on the wall. I will send them a new one to state that the outside seating is going to be just denoted on the license itself.
With that, I yield for now. Whoop.
Thank you. I think Mr. Hathaway has a question. Mr. Hathaway?
Yeah, so to avoid any confusion, I think, so the form that I've created, which is this one, it's a building permit application, and the dots on it represent where they have to fill out in regards to outdoor seating. There's 4 pages here, but it's just fill in the dots. And there is a $46 fee to go along with this application for me. If the city council chooses to go with the application that they're creating today, I think that's going to put this one null and void, because there's no need to require 2 applications for these people. However, I'm not controlling
that's it.
The public ways of this community. I only control private parking lots. So that's why I created this application and the requirements in it. So I think the city council, I would ask that the city, you tell me that you'd like the same application for private parking lots, and this one goes away.
Councilor Liberty, but before I give the floor to Councilor Liberty, I would ask, you said there's a $46 fee for that application that you have, Mr. Hathaway?
Yes.
Councilor Liberty is chair of the ordinance committee, and I serve on the ordinance committee too. I have not seen any ordinance before us stipulating what the fee is. Usually the fees on anything are voted on by the council. Perhaps I'm wrong. Councilor Liberty, could you add to that? Did you know about this?
May I?
Yes.
May I? Okay.
Talk to me.
When I created the permit for outdoor seating last couple of weeks ago, this is the cheapest building permit. The fee is the cheapest that my office has. And that's why I used $46. So our fees go from 0 to 1,000 and the fee is $46. That's the fee I created. I tell everybody to use because it's the cheapest. It's the least expensive fee that I have for a building permit. And that's been approved for the city council right along. It's a building permit and the least expensive is $46.
Councilor Liberty?
Yes, so Mr. Hathaway, I don't necessarily want to see your application go away. It serves a purpose if it's a public space. Not everybody applying might not need that, but I think it should be attached to the other application. If they need it, they fill it out. If they don't, they don't. Just depends on what space they're looking to use, but it's all going to be part of the same process. Correct?
Yeah, I'm just trying to streamline the paperwork involved. I started handing this out when I first started. I went to several individuals and I'll show you where the black dots are, that where they have to fill in on these applications. There is another page and all these signatures where the black dots are required. Those are the ones we're doing over the phone between myself and Detective Cadero, the police department, also through the fire department, sometimes with Kerry over the phone. I just trying to streamline the paperwork for these people because if you give them 10 pages, they're not going to want to do that.
No, I agree.
Could I just make a suggestion?
Yep, Mr. Kenny is next and then Mrs. Ferrera. Mr. Kenny, go ahead.
Thank you. Just very quickly, as far as expediting the process, I just want to mention, by the way, we can have a form ready to use and have the licensing board approve it Wednesday, even if it's not up online yet. We'll just, that might take a little longer. It depends on the IT department, but we'll have something that's usable right away, and then it's on them to move it online. And maybe the committee wants to suggest that licensing and building get together to make sure there's no overlap and that they can maybe merge their forms and processes together to if that's possible. They'll have to talk and just to move it along.
I think that the goal of the committee is to expedite this as soon as possible because many of these businesses over being closed for so many months are really hurting. That's why it kind of, maybe in the future, when we do this, they would have to pay a fee, but I don't even like the fact that people are paying a fee at this point because of everything everybody's been through. Like maybe this year should be a grace period. But I agree. I mean, if you would sit with Mr. Hathaway and combine the forms so that people aren't filling out a million forms, that might be somewhat helpful. Mrs. Ferrera, you had a question, perhaps adding to this conversation?
I did. I know Mr. Hathaway came down and met with me and we went over the application. The only concern that I had was on some of these parking lots that are private property where they want to place the area where people can go outside dining some of them are handicap spots. So I had said, if they're going to be removing any handicap spots to accommodate dining, they have to come up with whether they took out one space or two spaces. That's going to be very important to come up with another 2 spaces or 1 space to make sure that the handicapped person continues to have a handicap spot. And I know one of them was at the bottom of President Avenue, so they'll have to come up with that. I don't know Pub 99 where they're going to be putting their dining outside, but we have to remember that for private property. That was one thing that I had discussed with Mr. Hathaway. So if they fill out that application and they're going to remove any handicap spots, they have to replace them in another area.
Well, I did see Pub 99. They're doing it on the side of the building where there was no handicap spots. I happened to drive through that parking lot this weekend, and I did notice that. They haven't opened, but they were setting up some tables. So on that note, I'd like to touch on the fact of using half of the sidewalk. And I don't know if Jim, you could come into that conversation as to what's being done in other communities. And I'd also like to hear from Mr. Robillard and Mr. Pacelli regarding handicap and taking half of the sidewalk. I believe it has to be 32 inches wide that is left. I'm not sure. Mr. Robillard and I spoke the other day about that. But Jim, let's start with you. Any suggestions you have or
Sure.
comments to that?
Yeah, I believe it's 36 inches. I might be wrong there, but so I mean, we're familiar with a lot of different things that are being done in communities, not just throughout the Commonwealth, but across the nation. And you know, to what Glenn was saying about, you know, allowing parking spots to be used. That's a strategy that has been around for quite some time, and there's actually a term for them called parklets. And there's a lot of design and regulatory materials available out there for best practices around you know, helping restaurants and others develop parklets. And we'd be happy to try to put some of that material together and share it. And I do have some questions a little later on. One of the things that you know, we've seen in the South Main area, and certainly applies to some of the restaurants in the North Main area, is, you know, a lot of these restaurants don't have the facilities, you know, to have outdoor dining. And, you know, I'm really happy that you're looking at, you know, the parklet idea and freeing up some of those parking spaces for that use. We had also discussed maybe, you know, the potential to use other public spaces and set them up for dining so that people could take takeout and they could go to those designated spaces. There's a number of opportunities to do that throughout the Main Street corridor. And you know, we've already identified several of them. I don't know if how many people recall the Taste Fall River event in 2019. It was in April 2019. You know, where a number of people came out and, you know, they bought tickets to sample all these different restaurants. It was a very popular event, and the businesses wanted to do it again. And of course, it had to be pushed off because of COVID-19. But the Taste Fall River Committee is looking at doing an outdoor event. And you know, I've been working with folks from Rhode Island School of Design and the local arts organization called YACOR. At a number of different, you know, potential ways that we could assist in helping businesses, you know, transfer this event to an outdoor event. So that could coincide with, you know, trying to open up some of these spaces for outdoor dining. And, you know, they could range from Old 2nd Street to the Pocket Park on Anawan to Gramada Plaza and even City Hall Plaza. There's a number of other spots. Some of them are private, as we sort of move south down Main Street, including, well, there's Columbia Square, you know, and there's that nice little plaza that's there where Fasciano's is. We're looking at right away trying to do something at that spot, and the owner of the building is very much amenable. And then there's that little space in front of the firehouse near TA's. There's some other spots as you go up. So I didn't know if there was the potential to kind of have a comprehensive response to providing some of this outdoor dining. And that could go into North Main as well. I know, like, Taqueria El Habanero doesn't have, you know, a space. There's Dunny's, there's Sherry's Place, there's a number of the other restaurants over on Purchase and Bank Street and up around there. That could also utilize some of this space. And even though we're geographically located in South Main, we would certainly extend, you know, this up into North Main. And so, you know, if that's a possibility to allow this to happen, we could try to mobilize a team with Taste Fall River and with some of the design expertise that we have with Rhode Island School of Design and others. We also, just so people are aware, we're working with a consultant on a district activation strategy involving a lot of the community partners, and we've shifted all of that work to concentrate on small businesses at this point. And one of the things that would allow us to do would be to free them up to actually do a little bit of design work. I've discussed shifting that work so that they could provide some of the design work for these public spaces if that is if that's of interest. They were very much willing to do that and really shift that work towards helping all of these businesses find some kind of new normal. And then, the last thing I just wanted to, before I get into my series of questions, the last thing I wanted to mention is that there are a number of funding sources that are rolling out to help pay for a lot of these ideas. There's two that are being made available through my agency, through Mass Development and my program. And then there's a couple others that I wanted to mention as well. So the first one is going to be what we're calling a challenge grant. In a lot of the places that we work, there have been, there's been some difficulty with getting the regulatory changes, and it looks like you're already talking a lot about helping these things move along. But if there's any ordinance changes that need to happen, any regulatory kind of restructuring that needs to happen, we're saying that we will provide a grant, that one allows you, to that could potentially pay for, helping some of that move along, whether it requires some technical assistance or the work of a consultant, but it also could pay for actually implementing it, right? So the grants can, right now we don't know what the exact numbers are going to be, but my understanding is they're going to range, there's going to be a range depending on a number of factors between 20,000 and 50,000 per city. So it could pay for a lot of this furniture and lighting and helping build parklets. So that's one of the things that we're hoping to roll out pretty quick. That one would really have to be used within the South Main area and in the downtown and more the North Main area. We have another program that's called Commonwealth Places. Typically, it's been a crowdfunding program. Because of the projects that we're not able to move ahead because of COVID-19, we've taken those funds and we're doing a special round in which you don't have to crowdfund for the matching amount up to $10,000, and that can be used anywhere in the city. So if there are other businesses, other community folks out there, even the city, who say, hey, we want to do this to either a public space or a space that could, might be private, but that could be used for some of these, kinds of outdoor dining or other amenities. We're trying to get the word out that people can apply to this program, and that would be up to $10,000 unmatched as a direct ask. And if they want to match it, with a crowdfunding campaign, they could go up to $25,000. And I'm happy to answer whatever questions I can about these. The other one is on this. There's another private funds that were released, and it is called Streets for Recovery, I believe, and it is it's through a couple foundations, and that money can be used for all of these same purposes to improve these public ways, to make them, safer corridors for people, for dining, for bike passage, all those different things. They are asking that there be, that it be matched, and it could go up to $10,000. So I've put in just an inquiry to them to see if, for instance, our grant money could be used as a match for that, and see if we can't get a little extra funds to implement some of these ideas. But one of the things that we would need would be, to go through whatever permitting process there is, and make sure that there, we had all the necessary approvals from the city to, shift some of these public spaces toward these uses, and make sure that every element of them, were designed to, to the necessary standards. And
I think you have so much knowledge to share on what we can do in the future that it may warrant having having yourself come in with the counselors on this committee to really delve into all of those programs that are available with the city planner. I think that would be great for a future meeting.
I would be more than happy to.
My question is, in doing any of this, have you ever seen where people utilize half the sidewalk? Is it that sidewalks are larger? Have you seen that or not?
Oh, yes. Yes, we have. There are several instances where we have seen people, utilize the sidewalk so long as, one of the biggest difficulties, as Glenn was mentioning too, is when you have narrow sidewalks, the sidewalks divided into these sections, right? You've got the entry section, which is against the building. You've got the amenity section, which is near the curb. And then you've got the access, the pedestrian access section.
Right.
So when you shift things over, to the amenity, strip, sometimes that spills out onto, into that pedestrian corridor. And, we see that could be a bit of a challenge, but we've seen it done too. There is an example of it. I mean, as a nearby community, New Bedford has done it on Lower Union Street. Granted, they widen those sidewalks a little bit to allow that to happen. And, but sometimes you can just have just a few seats out there, right? That are sort of, done kind of in line with the other amenities, so that it's not spilling into the street and it's not, and it's not interfering with safe passage. So yes, we have seen it successfully done.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very helpful. Mrs. Ferreira, could you tell us the width of the sidewalks down in the South Main Street area, if you know?
It's various sizes. If you start at the beginning of South Main, they're pretty wide. I think they're over 36 inches, and it is supposed to be 36 inches to clarify with Jim.
What did you say? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
It is the 36 inches to clarify what Jim had said. It definitely is. I have the measurements here. But some of the sidewalks on South Main, especially in the beginning, they're over 40. They're wicked, wicked wide. And then as you get to the courthouse, they go back to being regular sidewalks. They're probably about 7 feet wide.
Okay.
So they're not the same throughout South Main.
So would you be able to use half, leaving 36 inches at some of those?
On some parts of South Main, yes, you could do smaller tables and still have room for a wheelchair.
Okay. And if the person does not have room for a wheelchair, then that goes back to Mr. Hathaway's thought of taking parking places. Now,
Correct.
With that, maybe not this year, where, we're not going to charge a fee, but in the future years, would that be something where you would want to consider a fee because you're taking up those spaces?
Well, we have to put in consideration, unfortunately, our downtown area, especially on South Main, you have Borden West, which is a lot of elderly parking, and they don't have a parking lot big enough. So a lot of those residents do park on South Main.
Okay.
You have the courthouse, which has about 200 employees, and then their everyday, constituents that go into there. We've utilized the parking garage where a lot of employees are parking in the parking garages to get them away from the street. So it is a very busy downtown. If you're going to take up 2 or 3 spaces, and you would have to, my only concern, and I think Detective Cadero can also comment on it, is the safety. So if we have to put concrete barriers, like Mr. Hathaway is saying, you're kind of going to have to go into that street a little bit, and you're going to have to be careful with all those cars that are going up and down South Main. So I definitely would have a safety concern.
Thank you. Councilor Dion, you had a question?
I have a comment to make. In light of this conversation, maybe this is a time to discuss the potential for turning South Main into a one-way going towards Government Center, going north, so that we could have all angled parking on both sides of the street, which actually would increase the number of parking spaces, thereby when you give a couple of spaces to a restaurant for the outdoor dining, you really aren't losing. We probably would still be gaining parking. I don't know if anybody has an appetite for that conversation or not, but it's the only thing I can think of at this moment to alleviate a number of problems.
Sorry, do you mind if I just address that a little bit?
Yeah.
We've been involved in a number of parking studies, and it's right now actually communities are looking for funds to do exactly the opposite, to take their one-way streets and convert them into two ways. One of the challenges with one-ways is that it does limit access, and it can be very difficult in terms of wayfinding and people circulating downtown. So if there's a discussion about changing circulation, and this is getting kind of more broadly about parking downtown. One of the things that we've heard from day one, starting to work in Fall River, is that there's a parking issue downtown, and that businesses have challenges with parking day in, day out. And we would recommend that if there's going to be any changes to the current way parking is configured and managed, that there be a comprehensive look at all the different ways that you could reconfigure parking and circulation, and then just have a commitment to move forward with those recommendations. Just as an aside, we've as an agency and as a program, we are willing to pay for part of that study. But we don't recommend that things be done in isolation of looking at what it will do to the entire system. We would strongly recommend that if you're looking to do something with parking, that you see how it affects the whole system, because it's going to get down to time limits on meters and pricing and availability of parking elsewhere as well. And one of the things we did a comprehensive one in New Bedford, actually, and one that is being implemented now, is also looking at the privately owned lots as well, and oftentimes that's a big source of parking, and I would say that is true in the South Main area as well. There's a lot of.
Thank you for
sorry, I can keep going on that one.
I'd like to hear from Danny Robillard or from Mr. Pacelli. What are your thoughts on if a street is wide enough that a restaurant can put a few tables, still leaving 36 inches for bypass of a wheelchair, or downtown, as Mrs. Ferreira said, there's a lot of elderly, a lot of people have those scooters now. But I'd like to hear from either one of you, your thoughts.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee and other guests. If you're within the regulations, it really depends on the sidewalk. And as a wheelchair user, I can tell you that every wheelchair is not the same size. Every wheelchair is not the same width. So it depends on the sidewalk. It depends on the establishment. It depends on the type of wheelchair. Those factors are really crucial. I can't sit here and say today that I'd be able to make some of those maneuvers with half the sidewalk taken. Some I probably wouldn't. To really know, you'd have to go on an individual walking tour.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Robillard, for that. And
Madam
perhaps
Chair.
you'd like to, connect, you and Mr. Pacelli would like to connect with Jim too, who's doing a lot of work for us in the downtown area, and go for a walking tour to see what the benefits and the obstacles that you have conversing the streets.
I would welcome that.
Mr. Kenny, did you have anything to add? Mr. Kenny?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think the planning department very much on board with Jim McKeague's comments about a comprehensive view of parking and traffic circulation patterns downtown. I think that contemplating a one-way South Main or North Main is something you can't even talk about in isolation. You've got to look at the parking and circulation as a whole downtown. And also, as Mr. Robillard said, the concept of maybe using some of the public way for dining, you really have to take a walking tour. These are very site-specific decisions that have to be considered. You can't just look at it as a blanket determination as we're going to do it or we're not going to do it. It's all very site-specific.
Thank you. Well, I think that what has come out of this, I'm sorry, Detective Cordero?
Yeah, I just want to touch base. Burners last year wanted outdoor dining, and we did okay it for sidewalk. We limited it to a 2-foot table because our biggest concern was not only wheelchairs but gurneys with the ambulances because of the elderly housing down there. Absolutely, some of those sidewalks are over 7 feet wide, and it was able to do it over next to Bertha's. Each business would have to be on a one-by-one basis to figure out what we're really going to do. I don't want to see a medical emergency and that gurney can't get by,
right,
and we approved that they could do it. Also, there's like a city ordinance about umbrellas can't be on the sidewalks. So there's a few things that each place has to individually be assessed to figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. It's not like we can just make it a compliment across the board for everybody.
And what is your feelings regarding into the street with cement barricades from a
I
safety?
have a couple of concerns. Safety-wise, it has to be cement barriers. We had cement barriers over on Rock Street, and they had reflector tape and everything, and they were getting hit on a regular basis on Rock Street.
Okay.
They are no longer there on Rock Street now, but when they were there, even though they're cement barriers, they were still getting hit. I
Thank
wouldn't
you.
want to see somebody having dinner and only a rope protecting them from a car.
Thank you. Councilor Dion, you had your hand up?
Yes, I think a lot of this discussion will be moving forward, and obviously there's going to be parameters that are going to have to be set up. There'll be permitting processes, and you're right, it'll all be on a one-on-one basis. I have a question for Ms. Ash in terms of if we institute that application and it has to do with the sign off with multiple departments. Would you be comfortable with signing off with telephone confirmation from the different departments, the way the police department and Mr. Hathaway are doing it now?
Absolutely.
Okay, because that would definitely expedite things. Yeah, I think for my part, I would like to really address and nail down the immediate need and take care of the people that are already in the pipeline, and let people who want to get into it, give them the information they need. And then the long-term conversation and what we're going to do after this, we can address separately, because I think we're kind of going back and forth and mixing everything up. So with that, I yield.
I think because this discussion has never come to the table and we're dealing with COVID and we want to try to get things resolved quickly. So I think this committee, in having Mr. Kenny and Ms. Ash putting together that form, getting that done, Mr. Hathaway and Detective Cordero are looking at when it's in public areas, they're doing that as well. And I think the four of them should kind of work together and see what works and what doesn't work, and to expedite it. Ms. Ash, I heard that some people are already being fined because they're not following outdoor guidelines. And one of the things that I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, that if you have outdoor dining and you serve an alcoholic beverage, that beverage must also be served with a food or some, an appetizer or something. So there's been some question about that. Can you help us to clarify that?
Sure. I'm not sure where the fines are coming. The only thing I could think is maybe the Board of Health. That might be a separate issue, but
Okay.
It absolutely has to be served with food. It has to be served to food. the whole purpose of the outside seating is to eliminate people touching things, going up to a line, putting a mask on. They're trying to just help where they can, but keep people as safe as possible. The food does, they absolutely emphasize food needs to be served with an alcoholic beverage.
So if food needs to be served, does that mean if, one of the clubs in the city has a parking lot and they're able to put tables in their parking lot per Mr. Hathaway, and they want to come and have a beer that they had to have, you have to have a bowl of popcorn or pretzels, or does it, what constitutes food? I've been asked that. That's why I'm asking you.
I know. That would be more of the Board of Health. For instance, the chairman, the executive director of the ABCC said it doesn't have to be hot. It could be a cheese platter, it could be a cold sandwich. But they have to eat. So they're just really trying, they don't want it to be a bar at this point.
Okay. Mr. Hathaway, you had your hand up.
Yes, I have a comment there. So the guys that I'm responsible for, food and milk inspectors, have been out on a daily basis, and they respond to complaints, numerous complaints in the course of a day. There is several establishments without names that have been operating, we'll call it illegally. Some of them we've been to 3 times recently based on complaints. Some of them we've been to a little bit more. They have not, to my knowledge, fined anybody as of yet. There's been a threat to fine them, and the threat has been, 3 or more times to an establishment, they need to receive a fine in order to stop us from running around from establishment to establishment and wasting an inspector's breath, so to speak, on how to conduct their business. So we've been giving them more than ample chances. The mayor has requested that on numerous occasions, and we are honoring it. So
what are they doing that they're not supposed to be doing, just so we can understand?
Okay, so one is a private club. We've been there numerous times. A couple of weeks ago, 30 plus patrons in the bar area. They're playing cards. Excuse me. They're playing cards, sitting at tables playing cards. They're sitting at the bar drinking beer and shots. They're conducting business as normal with blatant disrespect for COVID-19 and the community. There was, I'm going to name, not names, but I'm going to say there's at least 3 of those establishments that is done it on a continuous basis that I'm aware of. And I have suggested that if we pay those places a visit again, that they get a fine, because they're blatantly disrespecting the community and the COVID-19 requirements. And the only way they're going to stop is to receive a fine. But we haven't done that yet.
Thank you, Mr. Hathaway. Thanks for that clarification. Councilor Dion?
I agree with Mr. Hathaway. I think in more than one situation, part of the problem that we have in Fall River is we lack enforcement on everything. We always threaten, we always tell people, this is what you're supposed to be doing. But he's right. People know the rules, they know the laws. If somebody's been there in person, it doesn't take an Einstein to understand you're not supposed to be doing it. So I think it should be stronger than a suggestion. I think somehow they should have absolutely the ability, maybe on the maximum, if you have to go through 3 times is ridiculous, but if you have to go 3 times, the second time is a verbal warning. Next time you're getting the fine. The third time they go in with the citation. End of story. Because you have a lot of people trying to do this the right way. A lot of people truly trying to salvage their businesses. They're waiting patiently. And these other people are blatantly breaking the law and not caring. So I think that needs to be addressed.
I just want to add to that.
Detective Cordero, you had your hand up?
Just want to add to that. The violations that we have documented at several facilities in the city, those are all being put in a packet, and those are all going to be shipped to the ABC. You can't have 3 or 4 times, 20, 30 people numerous times. And those packets are being prepared and they're going to be sent up to the EBC.
Thank you.
I'd like to hear that.
Mrs.
Thank you.
Ferrera, you had your hand up?
I did, just for the parking, like if any of these businesses are gonna be filling out licenses or application through, Mr. Hathaway, and it's going to go on the street, if I could just be notified to make sure it's gonna be safe and if I have to bag any meters and all that. That's all that I ask.
I think, Mr. Hathaway, you have your hand up. Would you like to respond to Mrs. Ferrera?
Yeah, well, to everybody. So early on, we talked about private parking lots and if handicap was being removed in order to avoid seating areas. Yes, it has. And that's why I created a building permit. And that's why there's a fee to go with it. Because in order for me to to print a building permit, I have to have a fee associated with it. And the cheapest fee I can come up with is $46. Under these, I'm a little confused based on that, but just to clarify, so if in my inspection, if there is a parking place that's handicap accessible and it's being removed, I'm requiring it somewhere else in the parking lot. I am inspecting that. That's part of my protocol for inspecting these private parking lots that I have done. So I will assure you that those are taking place.
Good.
On the other side of the coin, I'm a little confused on how to proceed today unless we get some clarifications, because there's going to be a new form implemented. I'm confused that I think Linda is not happy with the fee associated with my permit. So do I put my permit aside and we wait for the new permit through licensing to come out and we just disregard my permit? Is that what you'd like to see happen? Please advise me on how to proceed, because I believe I have, after this meeting today, I have 3 establishments I need to visit, and I would like to be able to inform them and yet be precise.
Mr. Kenny?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is that the prototype from New Bedford contemplates that one of the departments that would sign off is inspectional services. So he's got his process, he has his standards and requirements, and if the folks have satisfied those, then he'll check the box on this. This is sort of a comprehensive license that licensing board needs for its purposes, but it also has sign-offs from all the other relevant departments, correct?
Correct.
So I don't see that this really impacts Mr. Hathaway's process as far as the standards that he has to enforce. Do you agree, Glenn?
I agree, but I also agree with the council members that they want to streamline this process. Right. And I got the impression that they don't want a fee associated with it. So I agree. We need to streamline. I disagree if I have to streamline. I can't charge a fee. It's the least expensive permit I can give them, and yet still do my job. But if they don't want the fee to go away, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. If they want this application to go away, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that either. Somewhere along the line, we're all going to be on some form. But how do I proceed in the today until this gets resolved? Because I know I have at least 3 appointments this afternoon with establishments that want to proceed with outdoor seating.
Can I make a suggestion that Mr. Hathaway use the form that he has now, and then Mr. Kenny and Mr. Hathaway get together so that the form is right there. Part of me doesn't want to let Mr. Hathaway, I'm not going to say off the hook, but he is the building inspector, and I want him to be able to know, you know, this is safe, these parameters are safe, and I want him to work with Detective Cadero on it. I think it's multifaceted. Honestly, my personal opinion is that because of everything people have been going through, I think that in the future, putting in a fee, I have no problem with if the person wants to do outdoor dining. But I think because of everything that's gone on, that maybe this year we do it with no fee, that you fill out your form with no fee for the next couple of months even. And if people want to, how long is this outdoor dining that the governor put in? Was it to November 1st or October 30th?
The The certificates that I am printing
Right.
are CIs. They're given once this is done. The deadline is November 1st.
So they're gonna have from now till November to utilize this. Counselor Dion, you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to comment on the fee. I think, again, had this discussion happened prior to people already starting a process, maybe that would have been an option. But in fairness to all of those who have already applied and already paid, to me, that's kind of like a slap in their face if people moving forward don't have to pay the fee. You know, unfortunately, I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately, you know, we were a little bit behind the 8 ball here, and I don't think we started the discussions soon enough. So I just think it's a little bit difficult, and I think Mr. Hathaway is going to get a lot of slack for that if, you know, Mr. Kenny?
Yeah, what do we have talked about? Maybe half a dozen people have already paid the $45. Can't we give it back?
I don't know, Mr. Hathaway?
Sure, we can request rebates and give them a refund. But I need and I'll request this now. So I need a formal request through the mayor's office, because that's the only time that I am allowed to not have a fee associated with a building permit. So I would ask that you request a letter from the mayor be submitted to my office waiving the fees for these. This way, when there is a study or any research done through council or the mayor's office or the finance department in the building, I can justify my actions for waiving fees. I just want to make sure that we're all on a clean slate. That's all.
I'll make a motion due to COVID and expediting this situation that we send the letter to the mayor's office for the purpose of returning the fees to the people who have already paid.
And going forth, the future don't have to pay. They're waived. The future fees are waived for the building permit.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, roll call.
Okay, on the motion to send a letter to the mayor's office to waive the fees and to refund the current patrons who already paid, Counselor Dion,
Yes.
Counselor La Liberty LeBeau,
Yes.
and Counselor Pereira.
Yes. Okay, so I'll look for Mr. Kenny and Mrs. Ayash to work together with Mr. Hathaway and Detective Cadero to put that form together online. And I think Attorney Rumsey hasn't said much during this meeting, but he's heard a lot of the discussion so that we can then put together an ordinance moving forward in future years. I thank you all for attending. I know that this has been a little difficult with so many of us, but it was a discussion that everybody needed to have together. Counselor Liberty, you have a question?
Yeah, I just have a statement and a question, I guess. We knew that phase 2 was opening on the 8th with outdoor seating. We have the letter from the governor, and while I appreciate the resolution put in by Councilor Pereira and Councilor Dion, prior to this, was there any communication from the administration to get this going? I know that everyone seems to have done it on their own. Mr. Hathaway's done it on his own. The licensing board, Kerry is helping everybody that calls, but was there any direction that came down from the administration to make this a more cohesive plan? I'm feeling like it shouldn't have had to come to a resolution coming from the council sent to a subcommittee to necessarily make this happen.
I had some discussion briefly, very briefly, with the mayor in regards to he wanted to make it as user-friendly, as customer-friendly as possible, as well as city council, a couple of city councilors bringing this to my attention, and they wanted it to be streamlined as much as possible. And The mayor had stressed that to me, and that's why I created the permit that I created with the documents I created, such as, I'll just show them to you. So along with that packet of the building permit is cement blocks. It has sizes. It has contractors that they can call to get the assistance. It's very specific and very brief in order to streamline everything. And that come from the mayor originally in a quick conversation I had with him as one of the first establishments requested outdoor seating. So that was several weeks ago. And that prompted me in my travels to have conversations with at least 2 city councilors and sometimes 3 to bring us to this point today.
I just at this point I'm thinking that we had a city administrator by this point, maybe this would have already been done ahead of time if there was a kind of a point person for this, rather than Council Pereira and Council Dion having to submit this to the council, and then Council Pereira working as quickly as possible to have this meeting. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Council Dion?
Yeah, through the chair to Council LeBeau. It was at least a month ago that I had my first conversation with a local business who was looking to do this. At that time, I did bring it to the mayor, and then at a subsequent city council meeting, I brought it up again. So you're right. Unfortunately, I don't think it moved as quickly as it should have, but at least we're here now, and hopefully we're going to get these people up and running very quickly. With that, I yield.
Thank you. I just think too that a lot of what the governor is putting forward is very confusing to a lot of communities as to what can happen, what can't happen, but being inundated with calls from a lot of the businesses in the city. I think Mr. Hathaway and Mrs. Ferreira, together with Detective Cadero, have tried to do the best that they can to motivate and push things forward. And I think that, the planning director has done the same. And I think Miss Ayash has been on the phone constantly with the licensing people up in Boston with everybody's been trying. So the purpose was like, let's kind of get all together to try to see where we're going and what we, as 3 of the counselors on the committee, what we can do to help. And then we would have more information too, to let the public know. I think the public business owners don't know enough. Maybe we need to have, the mayor needs to have a meeting with them or do some publicity, some PR work to let people know. And everything, like Mr. Hathaway said, is very different. For example, on Street, Adagio's, they have that alley between those 2 buildings. Is that a place that they could put some outdoor seating? As Jim said, in sidewalk, can they put 2 little tables outside of Harry's, for somebody who just wants to sit? I think that every area is very specific. And I did hear Mr. Hathaway say you could do one or the other and put up the cement blocks. And as long as Detective Cadero and the police department are involved with the safety of that. Laura brought up a wonderful point about gurneys, and she's right. We have a lot of elderly living in the downtown area. You certainly would want to make sure. So I think, getting together and putting a form, putting it online, people watching the Zoom meeting, having knowledge of what's going on. I think that at this point, I would ask for a motion to table, and we will bring this back to continue to talk about how we can do this moving forward every year from a certain date. And this will give us a good test run. Jim, do you have anything to add? We've been on for an hour and a half, so I don't want to.
Yeah, and I actually have to.
I really want to be able to connect with you and see what other ideas you have.
I would love that opportunity, and I really appreciate you suggesting that and having me here. I do have a couple things just to quickly ask before we adjourn. Is one is just a quick comment just in terms of the sidewalk versus the parking spaces. I think one of the things in light of COVID-19 is that is a specific challenge, an additional challenge to the sidewalk seating is that the spacing can be difficult. And that is something that's alleviated somewhat when you go out into the parking spaces. Another before I get into one, Glenn, is the expedited permit, is that available online on your website?
No, none of our permitting is on the website. If you call, I will hand deliver it, or you can come to Government Center and pick it up at the front door. I'll come down and hand deliver it to you.
Okay.
As far as the restaurants, I've been handling it on my own thus far, so to avoid any confusion and make all the rules the same for all, so that this way nobody's being treated differently.
So it sounds like, there's going to be a new permit process, but all of the additional information that you provided, if I swing by today and just gave you a call, could I pick that up? And then when I talk with individual businesses, should I just refer them to you?
Yeah.
Yes, but keep in mind that I think as of tomorrow, we're going to have a new permit application along with mine. So there may be
Why
an
don't I hold
additional.
off and then wait a couple days and then reconvene? Maybe I can touch base with you or Bill.
Anytime you want to meet with me, I'm available, and I will have as many applications as you need.
Great.
Okay.
Another quick thing. So in terms of the bars in the serving with the food, and I'm just wondering if you might consider having a bar that has the ability to do so, to have a food truck at the bar as a way of providing food to allow them to open up. I'm just
glad
throwing
you asked
that out
that
there.
question. No, I'm glad you asked that question because that did escape me. There was a group that wanted to have food trucks outside, and when I spoke with the licensing board chair yesterday, I don't believe food trucks are part of the open dining. Maybe Mrs. Ayash, could you clarify that?
They are not.
They are not.
Yeah, they're not.
So food trucks are currently not allowed.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So there needs to be more clarification there, or as part of the next phase.
And one of the things to add to that is we have a current city ordinance that regulates specifically food trucks. So in regards to anything that you do change, you need to look at that ordinance and see how you would like to proceed in changing that ordinance too. Don't just create one for this because of COVID-19, but you have to look at the current ordinance that we have in place. It's rather strict in some location, in some requirements.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't mean to open up a Pandora's box there. I just didn't know if that was a possibility. But it's something that I would love to talk about later. The other, just very quickly, two more things. In looking at, we're in a region that's actually slightly warmer than the rest of the state. And I know again in New Bedford that they've done this, is they've changed the outdoor dining ordinance so that it's essentially year round with limitations on when you can do it, due to snow and snow removal and that kind of thing. I didn't know if that was something, because I know the ordinance is imminent, and I didn't know if that's something you might want to consider to allow that kind of dining, And lastly, and this might get into the future conversation, is just having designated pickup spots for restaurants who are doing takeout. I know that there has been no ticketing of folks to kind of allow that to happen up until this time. But as we look to this broader conversation about public spaces and dining, I'd very much like to look at maybe having a few designated spots to allow people to pick up from restaurants as well.
Thank you so much. Councilor Liberty, you had your hand up. Was it on the putting building permits and everything online that we've been talking about? Was that what you were going to comment?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is
Which
going to
one? Okay.
I yield.
Seeing no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Council Pereira, you had a motion at first to table the matter. Did you not want to?
Oh, I did.
Yep. So do you want to
Can I
do
have a
that?
motion to table this?
I would make a motion to table.
Second.
Okay.
Roll call.
On a motion to table, Counselor Dion? Counselor Dion?
Yes.
Counselor Olivia LeBeau?
Yes.
Counselor Pereira?
Yes. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, and I'd like to thank you all for participating.
No problem.
Thank you so much.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call.
Counselor Dion?
Yes.
Counselor Olivia LeBeau?
Yes.
And Counselor Pereira?
Yes. Thank you all. Go and
Have a
enjoy.
good
your
day.